Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Talking Splat. Today, we have a special guest joining us. We have Ango from YouTube's Ango TV. Let me bring him on.
Hello, hello.
How's it going?
Ah, it's another day where I wake up, I'm breathing, I'm alive, so it's a good day.
And you got wrestling tonight.
Yeah, tonight's Monday Night Raw. I mean, what night isn't there wrestling? Really? I mean, that's the big thing. Every single night there's wrestling. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This weekend, there was like 2 nights of Crockett Cup on Fight TV.
Yeah. NWA had their stuff going on. Not bad. Not bad.
Nice. Well, let's get into it here. So, I guess let's get a little bit of background about you. Let the people know about Ango, like where you're from, how you got into wrestling, how you got into YouTube.
Yeah. So I'm from Detroit, and I got into wrestling. I think, like most people my age, honestly, just like as a kid, turning on TV. Back then, a little bit of WCW, a little bit of WWE or WF, whatever at the time.
Yep.
And I don't know, like I guess like it was just more of a thing where all my friends kind of enjoyed it, so I just naturally fell in love with it. Um, I remember, especially being in school because I was so young, like I really, really loved watching Sunday Night Heat, especially because back in the day, like the pay-per-views weren't like we didn't have pay-per-views. Like we didn't get to buy pay-per-views, at
Yep.
that young age. And then I remember I just fell in love with it. I don't know what it was about wrestling, but I became super in love with it. So as I grew up, as I got older, elementary school, junior high, high school, it actually kind of became a rocky relationship because at one point I stopped watching. I stopped watching completely. And I remember greatly when I was like right when YouTube launched. I also make music. So I remember right when YouTube launched, I was still doing like MySpace and stuff. I would put my music on MySpace. There was another website called Pure Volume. I'd upload my music there. Next thing you know, there's this video sharing website, there's YouTube. And I remember distinctly being like, I want to make YouTube videos. So I would upload my music on there. And, like at the time it was like Windows Movie Maker. You put a little bit of text on the screen and some pictures or whatever.
Yep.
And I end up stopped watching wrestling for whatever reason. I don't know if it was just me, like kind of in that phase of like, you know, getting older now and I don't like it anymore. But I kind of fell out of love with it for a short period of time. And then I remember probably like 10th, 11th grade, I end up deciding to start live streaming music stuff. There was a website called Blog TV. And I don't know if it was like Twitch before Twitch existed. I don't know if it was a separate company. I can't remember how that was, but it was like the first time where I seen something where you could go live. So especially being like a fan of music, I would go and live stream me freestyling to like beats or whatever. Like that was just kind of the thing, being a high school
Yep.
student. Like I had a really good run with music. I was on the radio. I did like cool things with it.
Oh,
And
nice.
then I swear spring break of high school, I go to Florida, come back, and it's John Cena versus The Rock, once in a lifetime. And I'm like, there's no way. My two favorites are wrestling at WrestleMania. I come back from my spring break trip. I buy the pay-per-view and I end up watching it. And I'm like, okay, let me talk about this on the live stream. And so at the time, like it wasn't even YouTube. Because I was doing things with YouTube with like NBA content or like FIFA content and stuff. But I was
Yep.
just doing like my live streams on that blog TV thing. And I remember right then and there, I'm like, it'd be really cool. What if I bought a capture card where I can start live streaming and making videos on YouTube talking about wrestling? And that was like literally the golden idea because my cousin actually had like I think it was called a Dazzle. Uh, it was
I
a capture
remember
card.
those. I remember
Yeah, it was
you.
like this like little white, like, red, yellow, green, blue, like, composite cables or whatever it is. I can't
Yep.
remember. But I was just like, okay, I'll plug my Xbox into it. I'll record WWE and I'll make videos talking about it. And I start doing that. Next thing you know, I'm not even joking when I say this either. One of my first few videos go absolutely viral, like million views. It got shared by Yahoo, Bleacher Report, like a whole bunch of different websites.
Oh, wow.
And that just completely took over. Like I was like, okay, cool. Like now I want to be like an actual YouTube creator. So I remember I took my graduation money, like that was gifted to me. I bought an HD capture card. I bought microphones. I bought everything. I started buying the software and I'm like, I'm going to learn how to edit videos. I'm going to learn how to make videos. And then the best part is, if I can make any money from this, cool. But if not, like, this is going to be a very fun hobby. So I just remember immediately after I graduate, I start doing every type of channel you can imagine. I had a tech channel, I had a wrestling channel, sports gaming channel, a community channel for FIFA, Call of Duty. I would do montages. And the one thing that really stuck with me more than anything was wrestling. So
Gotcha.
I jumped right into wrestling, and then I never looked back.
Nice, nice. Yeah, my wrestling starts a little bit earlier than yours. I'm a little older.
Sure.
So I remember as a kid, like growing up, I had LJNs and stuff like that. But it was before any of that. WrestleMania 1. So I'm from New York. WrestleMania was in New York, and Madison Square Garden sold out, big crazy event. My friend's father in our building, he was a police officer. On the side, he was doing security work. There was no pay-per-view at the time, but they had closed caption for certain sites where they would broadcast WrestleMania because it was supposed to be this huge thing. So he brought me and my friend. I was immediately hooked. Right after that, it was like, I need all the LJNs. I need, the Hulk Hogan workout set. I need whatever it was that was wrestling. I needed it. And like you, I fell out of love with wrestling a few times.
Yeah.
Um, so after that initial like period of Hogan and all, I kind of lost love with it when they went to like the new generation. So like, like the Dunk the Clowns and
Yeah.
and all that stuff, like where everybody had like a job. Like I lost and I was in high school at that time. So I was like, all right, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
Then Austin hits, like the Monday Night Wars,
Yeah.
and it just like sucked us back in. We
Yeah.
were right back in. I was going to shows like all over. Then ECW, and
Yeah.
then I was like, all right, I got to go to the ECW arena at least once, and I did that. It was by far the most bizarre thing I've ever been to. Um, it was insane. And then then every year, like I would order WrestleMania. Like that was like my one pay-per-view for the year that we would watch.
Yeah.
And then after like the Attitude Era, it kind of died again with like the Ruthless Aggression era for me. Like I kind of like lost it again.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what it was. Like I kind of was watching it on and off, and I would still, even though I wasn't really into it, I would do WrestleMania every year.
Yeah.
And then at some point, probably around 2007, is when I got sucked back in again. And it's been like I've been watching it on and off ever since, like, more so. And now like there's just so much content to take in.
Yeah.
And you have Raw, then you have SmackDown, you have AEW. I mean, you have what Dynamite, now you're gonna have Collision, Rampage, which
Yeah.
is kind of all over the place. So you never know when Rampage is gonna be on.
Yeah.
Impact, if you could get it, which sometimes they have some really cool matches. I've seen a couple Impact matches. I wish they would get more exposure because they have some really great stuff going on. And then NWA and it's MLW. There's just so much stuff to hit that there's just not enough time to
Of
watch
course.
it all. So,
Yeah, no, I mean that's really true, and I think the big thing is, and I tell a lot of people this too, like when I make videos, like I watch literally all types of wrestling. Now, growing up, a lot of people actually don't even know this. Like when I was a wrestling fan as a kid, and granted, I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
you're not really comprehending absolutely everything the way that you do on an adult like level. But when I was a kid, like I actually loved WCW more than WWE. Like I for some reason there was something about WCW that made me just like incredibly big into a fan. And then I remember once the like once the Steve Austin Vince McMahon stuff came around, I just remember all the kids in school who watched wrestling when we would talk about it in class, like that's what we were talking about. And I think that was the thing that really made me be like, okay, I'm done watching WCW,
yeah,
you know? And it's so funny because now in 2023, one of the things I preach to my audience is you don't have to be a tribalist. Like, you can literally enjoy whatever you want to enjoy,
Yep.
but go enjoy it. Like,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, I swear, like, I like MLW. I love Impact. I'm a very big Impact fan, but it is true. They don't have a lot of exposure right now. Their exposure was lost when AEW came around. And that's just the reality. And the thing is, like, I watch everything and I will praise and criticize absolutely everything. Like, that's just how I am. And if I don't like something, I'm very clear on saying I won't watch it because
Right.
there's so much to do. And I think this is the thing about wrestling fans that they often forget. There's 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. At least a bare minimum of 1 hour is dedicated to wrestling.
Yeah.
Because if you're not watching 3 hours of Raw or 2 hours of NXT or 2 hours of Dynamite, you're like, you could still get in an hour every single day with all these wrestling shows. So for me, if I don't like something, I don't watch it. Whereas back in the day, I try to force myself to watch WCW and WWE at the same time. Like, I would flip back and forth on channels, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, as a kid, I didn't care. Like, there was no, oh, I'm team WCW or team WWF. It wasn't like
Yep.
that. But obviously, that's time changes, and now we got the internet and everything like that too. So
Oh yeah, yeah. When WCW and Monday Night Raw were going back and forth with Nitro and Raw and
yeah,
everything like that, it was like I was that guy flipping back and forth because I wanted to see what was going to happen. Like
yeah,
you didn't know what would happen. You didn't know who was going to come out at what point. Like it was just it became must see TV at that point.
yeah,
And like I took a lot of heat, and I'm like you. Like if something sucks, I'm going to say it sucked.
yeah,
I took a lot of heat this last week on I was on like some Facebook forums and stuff like that, just like posting about Double or Nothing. And I was not a fan of the Jericho Adam Cole match. I
yeah,
thought like the beginning was hot with everybody coming to the ring. As a guy who went to the ECW arena, seeing Sabu go off the ropes through a table was absolutely amazing. And then it felt like the match died right at that point. Like right
yeah.
after that, the match died. And then everybody was like criticizing the crowd. And I was like, the crowd was great at points if there was something good going on. But when it kind of like died a bit, like the crowd was just like, whatever. And like destinations like Vegas or something like that, where you get some pure wrestling fans, but some people that go are just like, oh, there's a wrestling thing going on. Let's go get tickets and check it out tonight. So
Yeah.
you're gonna have that in the crowd as well at a destination like that. But you like you said, you can't just be all in. Like everything is great. Like because what everything they do is not great. Like there's been some stinkers.
Oh
Generally,
yeah.
AEW will put on a great pay per view that they have a history of doing that. Um, Double or Nothing had really high spots and some not so high spots, and I overall I thought it was a good show, but just by commenting that, like people were like all over me, like
Of course.
what are you talking about?
It's the biggest turnoff, by the way, with wrestling fans, because I've noticed this too, and I think one of the great things, like for me personally, as a content creator, full time content creator, my number one goal is to bring people together. Like, I
Yep,
literally built a Discord server, and like I tell people, like I have a person in my Discord. He gives ratings for each match, and it's really just him engaging with the people in the Discord community, and I love it, right? And I
yep,
tell people, I'm like, guys, if you don't agree with his rating, it's not a big deal. That's just how he personally views it. That's what he personally likes, and that's why he's asking you, what did you think, right?
yep,
And I love that about wrestling, that wrestling fans could come together and enjoy wrestling, because wrestling has always kind of been like the outsider thing, right? But also at the same time too, and I feel like I have to speak on this, because with wrestling fans, they will shit on me. And it's more specifically the IWC. They will shit on me for calling something out regardless of the company, as if these companies can't do anything wrong. And the
right,
thing is, like, I actually enjoyed Double or Nothing. I didn't enjoy Double or Nothing because Double or Nothing had this incredible build, because I felt like it actually had the opposite. But the thing I liked about Double or Nothing is the same thing I praise about AEW every single time, which is their television shows could absolutely stink. It could be the worst episode of all time, but for some reason, somehow, some way, they are able to get people bought into their pay-per-views. It does feel like a big event. It always feels like it's a big part of wrestling when you're watching it. And that togetherness, I've gone to the first Double or Nothing, and I remember the people I were with, they didn't know who Kip Sabian was or Sammy Guevara was. And I remember just telling them as they opened up the show, I'm like, guys, you're in for a treat. And this is the reason why I don't always like have an issue with AEW's builds, because I know that they struggle sometimes with building television. I see it, but I've seen their very first pay-per-view without them actually doing a build, and they delivered something. And that was a trend every year. Now, me personally, as a fan of wrestling, I have three things that I look for in my television show. I look for character and storyline progression. So somehow, some way, each week you have to progress somebody's character or their storyline. I call this continuity. It doesn't have to
Yep.
be matches. It doesn't have to be wins or losses. It's not this over convoluted, complicated thing. You just have to have some sort of acknowledgement as to why they're on the episode or why they're not on the episode, as to why are they inching closer and closer to the end of the storyline. That is the number one thing I look for. But the funny thing is, I get yelled at on Twitter because I say AEW doesn't do this. And Adam Cole and Chris Jericho's feud was actually a pretty legitimate build. And it
It
also
was.
benefited Roderick Strong. So what ended up happening was they had this match at Double or Nothing, and people aren't invested. People at home aren't invested. People in the arena may not be invested. What does that come down to? People don't emotionally care about these two characters going back and forth with each other. They might like the story, they might like the match, but at the end of the day, they're just, it's not for me. And that's okay. Because when I said I liked it, I got criticized, right? I got criticized for liking it because
Yeah.
everybody else massively hated it. But I was like, no, I liked it. Why? I felt like they did some creative stuff to get there. But also at the same time, too, look at what happened on Dynamite the following week. Jericho and Saraya tag teams with tag teams against Adam Cole and Britt Baker. And people are like,
Yep.
oh, well, that's a better match. Well, yeah, because now you're even more emotionally invested from the pay-per-view.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes, 100%. The build was great for that match.
Oh,
I mean, I thought, like with the t-shirt, they got a lot of flack for the t-shirt, but the t-shirt that came out with Britt
yeah,
Baker all messed up, like really brought people into it.
yeah,
And then the tag team match afterwards was, I thought it was a better match
yeah,
than a pay-per-view match, but 100%, like the build and the follow-up was great.
yeah.
I thought and I don't know if they're going to do something like that, but the blow off is to like move maybe like Jericho to Collision full time or whatever it is, because I know there was talk about him going there with CM Punk
Yeah.
and whatnot. But the way that they built that storyline is great, and they don't always do that. People just disappear at points. That's one thing during the Attitude Era that, and I know I'll probably get a lot of heat for saying this, but Vince Russo was good at continuing storylines week to week to week for people during the Attitude Era. Whether you liked his storylines or
Yeah.
not, it's a different
There we
story.
go.
But he had something for everyone each week to keep their story moving.
Yeah.
Which is something that you don't see in both companies. You don't see that. I mean, you'll have like your Roman Reigns and Rollins and the top guys getting their stories each week, but a lot of times down the card, people just tend to disappear. So that kind of
In the last 9 months, we can go and watch it together, and I could piece everything together for WWE. And the funny thing is, actually, I will tell you this too. I could do the same thing for AEW. And I think people are shocked when I say that, but you could actually piece it all together. But I will tell you the issue, right? And this is the thing about WWE versus AEW. And for me, I don't care which one does better because I literally get paid to talk about all wrestling companies. So
sure,
as
yeah,
long as they're all doing good, I'm happy, right?
yeah,
With AEW, you will see that their storytelling is actually really good. You will see AEW has really, really good storytelling. And as a little bit of a reminder, I'll say this too. For a while, WWE storytelling was only good with one story,
yes,
while
yes,
AEW from top to bottom was killing it with storytelling. But the problem is, from a week to week basis, AEW would have Swerve and Keith Lee continue their story, And then for 6 months, nothing happens. Then they revisit it. In WWE, there has been progression on all of these minor characters, minor storylines, but every single week there's some sort of continuity there. And I've been watching it hardcore, and I remember telling people this. I made a video or I was live streaming or something, and I was telling people, I'm like, this was I was doing a watch along actually. That's what it was.
Okay.
This was like right after Cody Rhodes joined WWE. Vince McMahon was still running it. And I remember telling people, I'm like, yeah, this was a 3-hour Raw. And this is exactly why I don't do watch alongs. Because the only thing I cared about on this episode, the only thing that was logical, the only thing that actually made sense was the Cody Rhodes thing.
Right.
Aside from Cody Rhodes, there is nothing for me to talk about because there was just matches that happened with DQ finishes. There's no logic behind why it's happening. Nobody knows why anything is happening. And at that same time, too, I was talking about AEW and I was saying, wow, right now, AEW for the last like 8 months has been tremendous with week to week storytelling because every single week they were doing these little freaking Easter eggs. And that was the thing that always pops me. Like, that's the big pop for me. You do the little Easter eggs with every little storyline, just a little bit of, keep progressing it, right? You
Yep.
get bought in. And I remember telling people, I was like, this is what's going to make AEW such a superior wrestling company. I'm not talking about from a business standpoint, but I'm talking about from a fanfare standpoint. People will get bought into these stories. And sure enough, what do you see happen? Triple H gets into power and everything changes immediately. And it doesn't mean that WWE is perfect. It doesn't mean that Triple H is perfect, but everything has a purpose on WWE television. And AEW will have episodes where everything has a purpose, but not everything does. And
Right.
that's the issue because when WWE has that happen to them, and it's happened a couple times, right? Raw after WrestleMania, we saw that whole
Oof.
debacle go down, and everybody was like, this does not feel like a Raw that we typically watch. Like, this doesn't, okay, it's one thing to not feel like a Raw after WrestleMania, but this one doesn't even feel like a normal episode of Raw. Like, clearly there's an issue here because
Right.
everything just felt random. And you notice that right away because you're watching other episodes and you're like, oh, yeah, there is a reason why Viking Raiders and the OC are wrestling right now. There is a reason why for this. All you need is a reason. And I
Right.
think I think AEW actually being so good is what made Triple H completely turn around the product. And I genuinely believe if AEW wasn't there, WWE with Endeavor or not, I don't feel like they would try as hard. But I think Triple H, maybe I'm wrong. I'm just kind of speculating on my own. But I think watching NXT Black and Gold get their asses handed to them by this new company really made Triple H want to, when he took over the main roster, I think it made him really want to change the narrative of how he is as a booker.
Yeah.
And you're getting guys, I mean, immediately mid card championship belts immediately become valuable again. And then the reality is the TNT championship becomes the hot potato. And if you're online and if you're having these conversations, because everybody does this on Twitter or Facebook, if you're going to point out a flaw with WWE, then you're going to say, but what about AEW?
Right.
Well, AEW does this, right? So obviously, when the mid card titles in WWE immediately get elevated, the thing about AEW that was special since day one is every championship belt was immediately prestigious. This company had no history and their title belts felt prestigious. So immediately you start having that conversation. You're like, oh yeah, now they're playing hot potato, Scorpio Sky, Sammy Guevara, Cody Rhodes. Like everybody's just touching the TNT championship. Like it loses its value, right? So you look at
Right.
Triple H, he changed the narrative of what happened. I think he changed the narrative of what happened to him on Wednesday nights. And the good thing is now WWE is kicking ass. There, and which, by the way, you need that to happen. Let me make that
Right.
like perfectly clear. If there's something you want to clip from this interview thing, like this is the one. WWE being really good and being at an all-time high with profits and all of these different things, attendance, that makes it better for every other company in wrestling. If I was an investor, I would not give my money to a second billionaire when I see the first billionaire who's had this empire crash and burn. I would not give my money to other people in the wrestling industry when the top guys are out. It's like, it just wouldn't make sense. You would be very cautious of how you invest your money. So when WWE is doing really good things and then AEW and Impact and MLW and all these other companies are around, it makes it better for them. I have friends who don't watch wrestling. I got them to watch WrestleMania. They loved it. Then they were watching the NBA playoffs the other day and they said, I want to watch AEW because that looked cool. They show a little trailer. They watch
Nice.
AEW. Hey, what did you think of it? You know, man, the matches were really good. I just, it's not like WWE. Okay, well, why? And they're like, hey, it just, I don't feel like I care. Like, I don't understand like like, I love the matches. I just don't understand the purpose of some of these things. Okay, fair enough. Like, again, these are people, they don't watch wrestling. They don't read reports. They don't know how wrestling is conducted, but they like WWE because they got a little bit more emotionally attached. They
Right.
liked AEW because they thought the matches were better. You know what's crazy? This didn't make them like this massive wrestling fan, but what it made them do was, hey, I'm going to record it. I'll watch it at a later time when I have nothing to do. It's not going to take priority over my life, but I'm going to enjoy it. Now, that is one person or two people who don't watch wrestling, who watched WrestleMania, loved WrestleMania, and then started watching WWE and then decided, hey, I'm going to watch AEW too. And he watches them for different reasons, right? That's
Yep.
a win. Because if you ain't
Yeah.
watching WrestleMania, you ain't going to find out about AEW. You ain't going to be cared about that. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. You brought up one thing there that I was curious to get your take on
yeah,
with reports.
yeah.
So dirt sheets have, I mean, they've been around forever, but I feel like lately the reporting on them has just been so all over the place. You have one person saying one thing, one person saying another thing. Um, it really came to a head with the whole brawl out thing
Mm-hmm.
and all the feedback or all the fallout from it that's come to this point where we're finally getting CM Punk returning, and then there's been other things here and there popped in, but that was like the main thing. What do you think, as somebody who reports on wrestling and kind of like you'll and watching your videos, I know you really put thought into it before just saying, this guy said this guy said that. You kind of take it to what you feel about it,
Yeah.
which is commendable. What do you think about the reporting of like Meltzer or Sean Ross Sapp, who seems like a really nice guy, but like they kind of get these tidbits and run with them and kind of change the narrative all over the place that not necessarily is what's really happening.
Well, that's the thing that makes dirt sheets so intriguing, right? Because you might not know their background. You don't know who their sources are. They're obviously not going to reveal their sources.
Right.
I feel like for me personally, and obviously because I talk about wrestling news and reports and I give my opinions and I try to offer some sort of logic when I read one and stuff like that too. Um, but I think the biggest thing about media literacy is there is a difference between somebody who gets something wrong for the purpose of trying to get it wrong, just the purpose of totally misleading. I think there's a difference between that and somebody who has really good sources and from time to time things just don't pan out. And those people, the second option, those people typically have the highest accuracy rate within their stories.
Right.
So I feel like, and Sean Ross is probably a great example of somebody who, when it comes to Fightful Select and what they've done, I look at them as a very legitimate group of people, their entire
Right.
team, right? With the other people in the space, I've seen people report stuff, talk about stuff, and present it as factual news. And just sometimes it just so happens that it's not happening at all.
Right.
And I know this because I'm talking about stories every single day, right? Um, I noticed this trend didn't start with All Out. It didn't start with the CM Punk stuff. This trend started with Cody Rhodes leaving AEW.
Yep.
Every single day, a different story. And there would be an individual who would say, "Oh well, he's actually in talks with AEW to come back to AEW." Then the next day, it's like, "Oh well, actually, what's really crazy is WWE and Cody are far along in talks." Then the next day, it's like, "Yeah, but he doesn't want to go to WWE for this reason." So him and AEW actually have solved their problems. And the thing about dirt sheets, I tell people, is don't get overly invested in dirt sheets. You know what I mean? I
Yep.
feel like that's the big thing. I feel like with reporting and stuff like that, and I don't. and to a lot of people's credit, I don't think a lot of people do it intentionally. Like some of the guys who have been there for years and years and years, I don't think these guys intentionally put out bad news. I mean, it's always possible they could be getting like bad sources or bad info, but like, you just got to be very mindful of, you know, who you're talking to, right? Or who you're like viewing, like when they're presenting their news, like the websites you visit. But I think the biggest issue actually more than anything comes from aggregation.
Right.
And when I say aggregation, I'm talking about the idea of like, if person says this, website creates a headline that does not depict what that person said. And so I feel like that's been a big issue because it's very easy, unfortunately, and I know this in the world of media, it's really easy to take somebody's words out of context. If I sit here and say I love WWE, people will sit here and be like, "Well, what's wrong with AEW?"
Right.
And
Right.
I didn't say anything about AEW. I just said I love WWE, right? So I do see that a lot in the dirt sheets where sometimes somebody could be saying something and then you actually read, and this is the thing. Society has done this as a whole. It's not just wrestling, it's everything. Sports, politics, music, whatever. But you read the headline of an article and you're presenting that as the fact, right? So, oh well, this person said this. And they see a title of a YouTube video and says, well, that's what he's saying, but you don't click the article, you don't click the full video, you're not actually looking for the context and what's being said, and you're running with the headline. And society has done that a lot with wrestling. And I
Right.
think that also kind of impacts those reporters, right? And that's why I said you just got to look at the ones who are incredibly accurate, and those are the ones you pay the attention to the most. And when I see Sean Ross Sapp and Fightful and what they do, and it's not about agreeing with everything they say or everything they do or whatever. That's their business to run. It's how they handle it. But to their credit, they've done a really good job, I feel like, of having good intentions. And honestly, I don't recall the last time I've seen them actually inaccurately like position a story either. I feel like their accuracy is incredibly high. So to their credit, there needs to be more people who actually model themselves after them and the way they report. Um, but of course, there's other people who I think they just want to be in the business and they make these Twitter accounts and all of a sudden they're a news source and they just
Right.
sit here and oh, well, this. And then next thing you know, it's like, well, that's not legit. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, you see that on YouTube too. Some of the creators in the space, they big on clickbait, huge on the clickbait. Like they'll put the title out. They'll put like the big thumbnail showing like I remember like years ago there was one I don't even remember who it was. Every other video was about like CM Punk returning to WWE, and they were like they even photoshopped like him in front of like Titan Towers, and put that as their thumbnail, and CM Punk seen at Titan Towers, and I was like, and then you listen to it, and it's like this is complete nonsense. So
Yeah.
it's
So, and well, that's the thing too. Like, as a content creator, I mean, I'm just stating the obvious, right? Like, this is me just stating the obvious. We're all in the business to get clicks.
right, right,
That's, I mean, whether people like to hear it or not, that's the truth. As a content creator, whatever your job is to get clicks, that's literally how you make your living, right? But I think also at the same time too, there's a difference between intentionally trying to lie to you to get you to click and making up fake news with the sole intention of getting you to click versus somebody who reads an article or talks about a story that's been planted and maybe it's not as accurate. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like intentions are always a thing because of course with thumbnails too, it's a psychological thing, right? I try to make my thumbnails in a creative way with also being like kind of fun, but also like kind of serious. So my thumbnails are always going to be like, okay, perfect example, uh, AEW makes a signing or signs massive free agent, right? Like, yeah, I'm probably going to put WWE vacant on there. Like,
right,
I'm
right,
probably not going to put, just like every other content creator, they'll do like a black silhouette with a question mark, right? Full transparency. Because you would be dumb to just put it on the thumbnail. Like, you want people to watch your content, right?
yeah,
But at the same time, too, there are people, and honestly, I don't know like how much it happens in wrestling, but there's a lot of people who will make these thumbnails where it's just like completely fake news, completely fake story, and they'll Photoshop it to make it look like it's legitimately happening. And then I think like that's kind of an issue because you're really just trying to like now you're just making up stuff for the sole purpose of getting clicks, and I don't like that obviously, but Yeah, I mean, the
I've seen
goal.
that in the video game space too, where like
Yeah,
with a lot of Xbox news, like, oh, Xbox does this, and then you watch the video, and it's like a 20-minute video, and nothing is ever mentioned about what the title of the video is or in the thumbnail, and I'm like,
yeah.
what the f,
And that's where clickbait gets really bad, because it's like, and I've always learned this as a creator, like, if I'm talking about something that's in the title of my video, I am talking about that. And I actually had a strategy where I don't talk about it for 10 seconds to be like, oh, well, at least I talked about it. Like, I try to give every topic or every story or every opinion a few minutes to breathe and just like let you kind of like dissect it. And that's the one thing I do prefer about my channel more than anything, is like, I want people to know, like, they could come to me and learn about wrestling and learn the in and outs of what's happening on television and stuff like that. But also at the same time too, like, let's create that conversation, because I don't expect you to agree with my view on wrestling, and I don't expect to agree with you on yours. But like, I'm going to talk about it, and let's have that conversation, because those conversations are the funnest, right? And when you're
Yes.
respectfully talking to people and saying, look, man, this is why I don't like CM Punk. This is why I don't like the Elite, and I'm curious to hear what you think. And next thing you know, you start to like become friends with these people, because you can have respectful conversations of like, yeah, I didn't care for this, or I cared for this, I like this, I didn't like this. But that's what wrestling is. It's what sports is.
Right.
Like, I go to a Detroit Pistons game, and obviously I'm not gonna like the team that they're playing against, but guess what? I love sports. I might like some of the other players on the other team. When I meet fans, or like when I'm talking to people who love Pistons games, it's like, yeah, we got to do a better job of guarding DeMar DeRozan. Why? Because he's really good, man. He's just smoking us in the paint. Like, that's what wrestling is. You're not going to agree with everything, but you're going to have those conversations, because it is, in that sense, a sport where like you can have those healthy conversations of what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. Unfortunately, in wrestling Twitter and wrestling Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, it's, you don't like CM Punk? Screw you. And it's like,
Yeah. it
bro,
it it's one of the most polarizing uh fan bases. Like it's you have to agree with them, otherwise you're the devil.
well, here's the thing too, and I want to add this because I think this is so important, right? If you sit there and say you don't like CM Punk, you don't know CM Punk.
Right.
You don't know what CM Punk is like when the cameras are turned off. What you heard about CM Punk through dirt sheets, which again, they're being given this info, and accurate or not, you are making a judgment on another person without knowing them or without meeting them, without talking to them. And I have learned throughout my experience. I've been doing YouTube since over 12 years now. I've been doing it full time for 2.5. Okay. As a full time content creator, I don't talk about wrestlers on a personal level. I don't talk about anything beyond their characters and their booking. I don't even really talk about their skill set as far as being in the ring or being on the mic, because at the end of the day, what I am watching is a TV show. I'm here to judge the TV show. I'm here to judge the product, right? I'm not here to judge these people on a personal level. I've met several wrestlers. They follow me on social media sometimes. I've gone to environments where I've been invited backstage, or I've, work stuff, whatever it may be. These people love wrestling. So I've noticed a lot of people on social media have the tendency, and they have the balls to sit there and be like, oh, well, I don't like this person. She sucks on the mic, or this and that. It's like, bro, calm down, watch the show, and if you don't like it, turn it off, because now
Right.
you're making like personal attacks on these people that you haven't met. You're judging these people you haven't met, and half the time they're getting worked by the characters.
Right.
That's the funny thing. So it's like wrestling has like this weird thing, and I never understood it. It's the one thing I really dislike the most, but it's like people are so quick. Oh, I hate Roman Reigns. He's a jackass. And it's like, well, dog, look at his character. Like, he's tapped into his character at all times. What you see on social media is him and his character. If you've met Roman Reigns and you've had a bad experience with him, okay, that's a different thing. And
Right.
that's why the Elite and the CM Punk thing, to me, it's always been one of those things where it's like, and I said it since day one with Brawl Out. I'm like, if they all got in a fight, fire them all.
Right.
If they all got in a fight and you're suspending one of them, suspend them all. If they all got in a fight and nothing happens, then nothing happens to them at all, because it's a collective group, it's a collective thing. But
Right.
immediately people were trying to sit there and point fingers based on backstage reports, which, by the way, there were so many big misreports and inconsistent reports. How are you going to sit there and wish terrible things to happen to CM Punk or Kenny Omega or the Bucks or this or that? Like, again, you're not there. You're not backstage. You don't know these people on a personal level. You're sitting there going and making judgments based on he say, she say. That's the number one thing I hate. I try to stay away from that. I don't make my personal opinions on those things because, again, when you meet these people and you have conversations with these people, they are normal people. They
Yep.
love wrestling. This tribalism shit that happens on social media, it doesn't really exist with them. I haven't seen it. You
Right.
know what I'm
Right.
saying? So just one of those things. I think wrestling is it's the most incredible thing to be a fan of. I don't think there's anything like it. 52 weeks of live television. I enjoy watching it. If I don't enjoy watching it, if I feel like the product sucks, I have no problem saying click, turn it off, go watch some sports, go out with my friends, go do some other stuff. Because there's no amount of money in the world that you can pay me to just make me sit there 7 days a week and watch wrestling nonstop. You know what I
Right.
mean? You got to have a
Yeah.
work-life balance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just one of those things, man. I feel like people got to understand that, like, it is a television show. At the end of the day, more than anything, it's a television show. And now with social media and YouTube and Twitch and all these things, you don't really know who's in character, not in character. You're reading reports. You don't know these things. You don't want
Exactly.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't
It,
want to make personal judgments on things that you don't have a personal attachment to.
right. And then also with the same vein, all these different reports came out, and now who's giving the report? Somebody that likes that person, somebody that doesn't like that person. What's the personal spin to it? What's their source feeding them? That's true, that's not true. So now they're putting this out, and it's almost like, yeah, but is it true? Is it from a nondescript party that doesn't have a feeling one way or the other? Is it, like,
Yeah.
what's going on with it? So it's a weird thing, because on one point, like, all the access to backstage and all that stuff that wrestling provides, more so than any other sport,
Yeah.
or entertainment, for that matter, is great, but also bad, because now it's almost like you get too much information. Like, it's there's just so much stuff that comes out that it's all consuming.
It's not though, actually, when you think about it, because if you look at the NBA and NFL, they have their personal health records. Like some dude breaks his ankle and then gets an infection or something happens, you're finding out about this stuff. They make it public, right?
Right. Right.
In wrestling, like literally, like these guys get injured or they're pulled off TV and they're gone for 8 months, and then you have Billy Bob 5555594453645 sits there on Twitter and says, "Oh, so and so is a piece of shit. They're all WWE is burying this person, blah blah blah." Oh, and then it just turns out a week later that person comes back and says, "Hey, I'm pregnant." So like you see what I'm saying? Like, not everything
Yeah.
is made publicly from WWE or AEW, and that's the thing. A lot of the information comes from people behind the scenes, and people got to remember, like, that's the difference between that and other sports. With sports, you'll see press releases almost every day for free agent signings, for whatever it may be. WWE signed Chelsea Green, and people were like, "Oh, well, why didn't WWE put in Chelsea Green? She's been signed for 3 months." Well, WWE didn't tell you they signed her. You
Right.
found that out from a dirt sheet who doesn't work for the WWE, and they were accurate in the sense that Chelsea Green has been signed for months. But at the end of the day, you're making a personal judgment towards WWE for not telling you that it's a TV show. People got to separate it. They
Yeah.
really got to separate it.
So you said that you're only doing YouTube now full time for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So leading up to that, what was like your background? What was like, coming into that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I worked the corporate life right out of high school. I was going to college, had a really, really good job, quickly moved up in it, stayed there for about 10 years. And I without being too specific, I climbed up very high into the company, very, very high into the company. But with that, though, especially, 2020, we had a certain thing came around that shut down the world.
Yep.
And at that time, I remember I was only off for about like 2 weeks before going back. And even at the time when I was out of work, I mean, I technically was still kind of working in a sense. But I remember at that time during shutdowns, I kept thinking in my head, I'm like, I already have an office for YouTube stuff. I was doing it part time, and I had to close down the office because everything was getting shut down. And I remember just thinking to myself, I'm like, at some point, I am going to go full time. At some point. And I remember when I was at my job, I remember I had an offer to go somewhere else. And basically, the thing that came up was, hey, you'll make even more money than you make now. You get to work less hours, which was a huge thing for me.
Right.
Um, and because I was working 70, 80 hours or whatever, I was like, okay, so now I could go to another job. I'm technically starting fresh, but it's a better job, whatever. I'm gonna do it. But I kind of put it in my head. I'm like, I just want to do this only like knowing that damn well I'm probably gonna go full time with YouTube. But I felt weird about leaving my current situation. So I was like, I'm gonna leave this, go to the new job, and if I don't like it, like I'm not forcing myself there. I stayed. I mean, honestly, if you really want to know, I knew the first day.
Yeah.
I knew I was like, yo, this job is sick. Like, cool ass job. Cool ass job, like a really cool thing. I was like, I love it. This is not what I meant to do in my life. This is not what I meant to do. So after the first day, I just kind of I was like, all right, let me give it a shot. I was always like I always had the mentality if I because I don't job hop. So like
Right.
my whole thing is like if I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna give it a shot, see if I genuinely like it. And I remember like second, third, fourth day, I was like, no, like it's a cool job, like they're great people. I like my coworkers so far. I like the fact that I'm not gonna have to work crazy amount of hours like before. For the first time in my adult life, I'll actually have a work-life balance. Like that was a huge thing. And then I went to All Out later that year. And I remember I was sitting in a suite. Can't remember who I was talking to, unfortunately. So God bless them if they hear this. But Ango, you go to these events. You've done red carpet events. You've done all of these things. Why are you working the corporate life? Why aren't you taking a chance on yourself? It was that one conversation. And I remember saying, you're right. I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
Dead ass serious too. Not even joking. I get back from Chicago. I send my boss a resignation letter, thanked him for absolutely everything. And he responds back with, you know what you're meant to do, and you should have been doing it this entire time. Go for it. Something
Nice.
along the lines of that. You know, he's like really supportive of it. And hey, if you need anything, let me know. But good luck. Cool. Next day I wake up and I'm thinking, what do I do?
Yeah.
Because I didn't really think it through. I always had like a business plan or an idea of how I was going to go about it full time, but it was just like culture shock because all I knew, like I didn't have weekends off, you know, in the last 10 something years. Like I had to work weekends. I missed holidays at times. I missed funerals or weddings or whatever parties. Like I missed a lot of things in my life because of work. And so the first day I started on YouTube, I was like, all right, I know what I need to do. And I never take it for granted. I love the fact that I'm able to do this. And I think that's the one thing like I'm truly happy about is I will never take it for granted. I will always love doing it. But at sometimes you need to have a little bit of a work-life balance. Your life
Yeah.
cannot be all about work. And I feel like for the most part of my life, it was always about work. So from that day forward, I was like, I'm going to go work hard, work hard, work hard, figure it out. And a lot of times, like, yeah, I make videos and stuff, but there's a lot of things I do on the back end a lot of people have no idea about. And those are the things that like really make me love this stuff because those are the type of things that are allowing me to have a work-life balance, right? Like corporate world, I would work sometimes 8 to 9, right?
Right.
Or maybe 9 to 9 or whatever it was. Like now it's I work when I want to work. I go out when I want to go out. I am truly my own boss in that regard, but I still treat myself as if I was working in that corporate environment where it's like, okay, you're not allowed to do this until X, Y, and Z are done. You
Right.
know?
Right. I do the same thing. So like my website just went full time, just kicking off YouTube, and it's one of those things where coming from that corporate life, where however hard you work doesn't really benefit you. It benefits like your company that you're working for, or whoever it is. You might get a little bit better bonus, or a raise, a little better raise, or something like that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're just an employee.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like like the night before, like I set my schedule for the next day. I'm like, all right, I need to do 3 or 4 posts on the website before I can go to the gym. And then when I get back from the gym, I have to do another 2 or 3 posts, and I have to reach out to, X, Y, and Z to see about podcasts. And I have to, so I make like a list for myself of what I need to do for the day.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, like, so tonight, once I finish, I'll like, do whatever I have to do after work, and then get ready to watch Raw, see what's going on Raw.
Yeah.
And then, like, tomorrow I have my plan for whatever I need to do. And at the same time, I just bought a new house, so I'm doing renovations, I'm doing my kitchen. So, working on that at night too. So it's like, all right, I finished watching Raw. Maybe I make a post about Raw. Maybe I paint where the cabinets are going to go so that looks finished so I can get the next step done.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all in, like, it's, I have this schedule, I'm doing what I have to do, but at the same time, like, whatever I'm doing is just benefiting me going
Yeah.
forward. So
Yeah.
it's one of those cool things. And like you, like, all the years in corporate life, like, I knew it wasn't for me. Like, it
Right.
wasn't what I wanted to do.
Right.
Originally, I was a barber, I worked in restaurants, I worked in a pizza place. And like, owning something like that, or owning my own business. My father owned his own businesses, my uncles own their own businesses. So coming from that type of a family where you're entrepreneurs and then you're stuck in this cubicle,
Yeah.
it's just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is not what I want.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the important thing about life, right? Like, and I think you have to look at it from what truly fulfills you, because I didn't realize how much I didn't like my corporate job, right? Like, I didn't realize how much I hated it until the end. And you kind of learn as to how you got there looking back in hindsight. You look back at some of the, maybe the company decisions or whatever it may be. You kind of look and say, that happened. And then I noticed after that, that's when things start to go a little bit downhill. And the thing is, like, for me, it was always about, I knew what I wanted to do with my entire life. And I always tell people, like, you might just see me making YouTube videos. And like, yeah, I stand in front of a green screen and talk for 10, 15 minutes per video, whatever. And I, like, that's not the end goal for what I'm doing with my company.
Right.
The thing is, to get to the next level, I have to make up for 10 years of my life where I did not pursue this full time. I'm behind. That's how I looked at it, right? So I was like, I feel like I'm behind, because if I had been doing this full time for 10 years, which, by the way, there was so much in the middle between all those years where I didn't get into detail, but like, there was so much that happened in that time where I've had the opportunity to go full time all the time, and I was
Right.
scared to do it. So now I'm not scared to do what I want to do. But to get to where I truly see this YouTube channel becoming, it goes beyond just YouTube. It goes beyond just having a website. It goes beyond just having a live show. Like, I see really, really big things for my company.
Nice.
And I want those things to happen. I really sincerely, genuinely do, because I feel like what I have planted in my head has always been bigger than just content. But it requires capital, it requires time, it requires so much that it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
So I can sit here, and I remember one of the biggest things, I remember I was talking to my uncle about this from the time that I was going to quit my job. When I told him I was going to quit, he tried telling me for a while, like, I know you should be doing this, right? Like, he was very, 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 everybody in the family was super supportive, but him specifically, I remember when he talked about this, he's like, you know what you can do. You're just not doing it. And I remember when I told him what I was going to do, and he's like, what are you waiting for? Go and do it.
Right.
And so that fulfillment of knowing, damn, I don't have to answer to the same people who have been telling me what to do in my life. And in 2020, I had an emergency surgery, right? And I remember having this emergency surgery, and I was checking my phone, my email for work related stuff. I come back to work a week or two later, or whatever it was. I can't remember honestly how long I was even in the hospital for, but I remember I was in the hospital. I remember coming back while I was still in the hospital. I remember checking my stuff for email. I come back to work and I remember thinking like nobody really gives a shit,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. So there's just certain things by doing what makes you happy. It doesn't matter the money, it doesn't matter anything. It just matters what you feel inside. And I've noticed that for a long time, I felt like I was held back by somebody else's goals, somebody else's dreams, somebody else's opinions of what they think is best for me instead of trusting my gut instinct. And that's really what it comes down to. And now, regardless if my uncle would tell me, if do you want to be 70 years old and regret the fact that you didn't do it? Because if you want to be 70 years old and think back, why didn't I do this? He's like, then that's a life wasted. And
Right.
I remember thinking, as soon as he told me that, I was like, now I'm 29. I love what I do. And if it all goes away tomorrow, I can look at every person dead in the eyes and say, I gave it my best shot.
Right.
And that's a good feeling. That's a
Yeah.
good feeling to know you'll never have to live with that regret.
Yeah. I have a similar story. When I first started at my company, back in 2005, I was working in the call center. I was having LASIK surgery for my eyes so I can see. I was pretty much blind without glasses.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Hey, I'm having surgery on this day. Can I have the next day off, so that my eyes can heal?" And I was working in a call center at the time, like when I first started. No, we there's too many people off. We can't give you off, so you have to come in. So I had the surgery at night, like whatever, 4 o'clock in the afternoon was my surgery. The next day, I wake up. I have these like goggles on to protect my eyes. My eyes are all like bloodshot. I have, every like however every hour or whatever it was, I had to get up and go put drops in my eyes to have them heal, and I had to go to work. And I'm at work, and the same people that told me you can't have the day off come over and we're like, "Oh, look at your eyes, they're so red, they like, I've never seen anything like this." I'm like, "Well, you wouldn't have seen it if you gave me the day so I can at least like heal a little bit before I'm sitting here." And I worked in finance, so
Yeah.
I'm doing trades for people. I'm reading like loan provisions and stuff like that to people, and I'm like, you do realize like my vision is cloudy right now. Like it's quite possible like I could make a mistake on what I'm saying or whatever, like because I don't see the screen 100%. But they didn't care. It was like, we can't give it to you because we have this box that we have to fill in, and you have to be here for that. So that was just one thing. And then like I have an uncle who's going to be 90 this year, still works 5 days a week, loves what he does. He's a barber and goes to work, goes out to dinner with friends. Like the guy just loves life.
Yeah.
And it's like, I look at him and I'm like, he just loves what he does and he's just enjoying it for however many years. Like I was like, what am I doing where like I'm doing something I don't enjoy? Like it's I was going through this life-changing thing right now where like a lot in my life has changed over the last few years. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm doing it. And
Yeah.
and I just said, you know what? We're starting new. I bought a new house. I quit my job and I said, I'm going all in. Like that, like AEW, I'm going all in. Like that
Yeah.
was it. Chips
Yeah.
in.
I tell people all the time though too. It's like it's not about owning your own business, or it's about just being happy.
Right.
Like I think people get lost in the message sometimes too, because I remember like I would tell people, like they would ask me my story and I would tell them, about going full time and stuff and taking that risk. To me, I knew it would bring me happiness. I didn't gamble on myself because I think this is a good idea and I think I could do this. I took the gamble because I was like, whether I can do it or not, whether I'm successful or not, I think I'm going to be incredibly happy. Right.
Right.
So for anybody who's watching this, I don't want them to get this idea that like, oh, I'm just going to go build a website, or I'm just going to be a YouTuber, or I'm going to be an influencer. Like, there are, just as much as there's things that make me happy about what I do, there's obviously things that are going to stress you out, and things that it's not perfect la la land. And I
Right.
think the internet has made a lot of people think that, oh, everything's perfect. That's not how the world works. So if you are somebody who wants to go work in the corporate life and you go and get your degree in something that is so incredibly fun to you, like if you want to be a doctor because you love what doctors can do, then go be a doctor. Don't, you know, do what makes you happy as long as you are not harming or hurting anybody else. If
Right.
you want to be a doctor, YouTuber, Twitch streamer, website owner, website builder, marketer, whatever it is, just find what it is that you're passionate about and you're happy about. Because I feel like in my life, if I did this back then, I feel like my life would look very, very different right now. But
Right.
no regrets. You're not going to have regrets. You're just going to move forward. And I want people, because me and you have a similar story in that regard. There's no such thing as perfection, but you're doing what makes you feel happy and what makes you feel comfortable for being right for you. And what's right
Right.
for you and right for me may not be necessarily right for somebody else watching this.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's a great point to end on, is that just do what makes you happy for you.
100%. 100%. Because it's really easy, especially in social media, right? We were talking about it earlier. You could have your opinions on wrestling. You could have your opinions on all these things. And that's great. You can love wrestling, hate this person, hate that, whatever, promos, matches, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're going to wake up every morning and you're going to have two choices. You're going to wake up and get on with your day and be a happy, positive person, or you're going to get up and be miserable. And I just can't imagine being given 24 hours in a day to do whatever makes you happy, spending that time on being miserable.
Right.
And therefore that's the message I leave everybody with. Do what makes you happy, as long as it ain't hurting or harming anybody. And if that means making YouTube videos on wrestling, go and do it. I support it. If that means being a doctor, go ahead and do it. If that means culture splat, that's what it means. You know what I mean? So
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being our first guest
of course,
on our podcast here.
making history.
And yes, yes. And hope to interact more with you. Like I said, your story is great. I've been watching your videos for a while now, so just obviously keep that line of communication open, and
Of course.
who knows where it goes in the future.
Of course.
But I want to thank you again, and for everybody out there watching, Ango, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, I have a website, ango.live. Also on YouTube at Ango, uh, Twitch at Ango, Kick at Ango, Instagram at Ango, TikTok at Ango. I mean, look, you could pretty much find me anywhere just by putting Ango.
Okay.
If you search Ango, Ango PW, like it's all kind of relative. But yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. So
Awesome.
don't be afraid to say hi.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And everybody out there, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, show us some love, and rep Ango for all the Ango fans out there.
Woo.
Awesome.